You're listening to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast, your podcast for escaping life's monotony, indulging in your wildest travel fantasies, and discovering the constant beauty of this ever-changing world.
It's Travel Tuesday. Today, we're joined by Trisha Stacey as she shares stories with us about Hollywood TV show filmings, midnight pasta, and more.
Welcome to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. We're your navigators, Allison
and Regan. And today we are going into another Travel Tuesday. Super excited. This newly formatted segment that we have for you. As always, we're going to be going through some travel stories. And actually, we have a special guest here, someone who's very special to me. But we'll get into that in just a minute. But first, we wanted to start off with a couple of announcements. We just started season 2 a couple of weeks ago, so we're still pretty fresh. There are a lot of new things happening. Most notable might be our website. So go ahead and check that out. It's www.wanderlustingwives.com. There you can find all sorts of stuff. You can learn more about us and like our past and a little bit, some fun facts about each of us. You can find all of our episodes there to listen to. You can subscribe to our email list. We'll send you an email whenever there's a new episode and anything fun happening. We do encourage you to do that. Super fun. So yeah, go ahead and check out our website. We're really excited about it. And Allie, what's going on over at social media?
Yeah, so please make sure you're following us on social media because we're going to be doing a giveaway. We talked about this briefly on our last Travel Tuesday episode, but it's happening and you're not going to want to miss it. We're going to have gift cards, fun travel items for you, and we want to make sure that you're following us. So Instagram, you can find us at Wanderlusting Wives. Facebook is Wanderlusting Wives Podcast. Twitter is Wanderlust Wives, and we're trying to reach 200 followers on Instagram and Twitter, so help us out, and we'll help you out by giving you some awesome travel gear. And then, as always, our email is open, and that is wanderlustingwives@gmail.com.
Yeah, and if you go and subscribe to our email list, that is another way in which you can be entered for this giveaway. And if you follow all the rules on social media, you can get an extra giveaway entry by subscribing to our newsletter. So you don't want to miss those opportunities to connect with us. And also, if you have stories to share, we'd love to have you on our podcast. So you can head over to our website to just kind of connect with us and tell us a little bit about your stories. We'd love to hear from you. So for today's stories, though, we have some really exciting stories coming at you from a woman who I'm pretty close with, I would say, my mom, Trisha. And if you were with us for last season, she came on the podcast a couple of times to talk about traveling with kids and all sorts of stuff. It was just really fun to have her on the podcast. And she's been traveling for so many years, so many vacations. So she has a ton of really fantastic travel stories to tell, and we thought that she would be a great guest for one of our very first weeks. So welcome to my mama.
Well, hello, girls. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thanks for being here.
Nice to have you back.
Yeah. So I personally have been on several trips with you, but before I was born, you were already an avid traveler. So I'm really excited to hear all of these different stories that you have from throughout your life. So what have you got for us?
Well, it was easy for me to put these stories together because I have a travel journal, as you, Regan, are aware of, and it is about 170 pages, single-spaced. First, it was written by hand, then typed into a computer, and now it's somewhere in outer space, whatever the cloud thing is, so the whole family can read it right from there. But it's a lot. So, yes, I'm going to start with Once Upon a Time in 1982. So this is before probably most of the listeners are even born. But your dad, my husband, David, and I went with a pair of friends from college in a tiny, tiny car called a Datsun. Whatever the very smallest car is that like Honda or Toyota make now, that's probably the size of a Datsun. 4 adults across the country in that tiny car with a rooftop carrier on top. So all the way across to California even. And when we got to California, David, my husband, and I decided we wanted to go to a taping of the Johnny Carson show. If you don't know who he is, look him up. So we got up early one morning and we went to this little ticket booth outside and got in line. And the people before us in line, the ones right in front of us, got the last tickets to go see Johnny Carson.
Oh,
So we just pouted up to the window, and the guy said, "Sorry, they got the last tickets." And we were like, "Oh." And he said, "But we do have tickets we could give you to a brand new show that's being taped if you would like those." So we're like, "All right, we're here in Hollywood. Let's go." So we arrived at the time of the taping and went into the sound stage. And I mean, it looked really cool. This cool set of like this bar. It was really cool. And then they started the taping and the cold open, which happens before the song, the theme song and the opening credits. There was this character named Harry the horse that came into the bar and did like this magic trick or something. He was like this flim flam magician. And the opening, cold opening, was amazing. And then they ran the theme song and then the show started, and we loved it and laughed, and the characters were amazing. The show was Cheers. And we saw an episode being taped before it had ever been on the air. And we became lifelong fans. I don't even know how many years it was on the air, but we watched it right till the end. So that was really a cool, I think, way better than Johnny Carson. Sorry, Johnny Carson. I loved him too. But then I can flip forward to 2005 when David and I went on our 25th wedding anniversary trip out west. One of our stops was Hollywood again. So we got tickets for 3 different shows to be taped. And something cool was in each of those. We went to see Jay Leno being taped, and his guest was Kevin Bacon. But while he was interviewing the guest, it kind of looked like Jay Leno was looking over his guest's shoulder, and his writers were on cue cards writing jokes for him to say in response to what Kevin Bacon had said, which I was like, oh, I don't know if Johnny Carson did that. And then the second show we went to see was called Eight Simple People, and we had only watched it once before we went because we knew we got tickets. It had David Spade, Katie Seagal, and James Garner in it. So like, well, 3 stars. Let's go. I don't remember actually very much about the show, but they fed us blueberry muffins during the taping because it took 3.5 hours to tape this half-hour show.
ooh, I want blueberry muffins.
You waiting for 3.5 hours for them though? They'd have to be pretty darn good blueberry muffins. And the last show we went to see was the best. It was Will and Grace, and this was incredible because they did every scene twice. So they do one little scene, and then they'd stop, and then they'd do it again, which they had done in other tapings. But the difference in Will and Grace was they did new jokes the second time around. And then they must have cobbled it all together for the final airing on TV based on how much people laughed at different jokes. So that was a hoot. That was amazing. So
That's so
pretty cool.
fun.
You can still do that now, get tickets for tapings like that. So that was fun. That was really fun.
So I do have a question. Did Kevin Bacon do any cutting loose, foot loose, kick off your Sunday shoes?
No, Louise, he didn't. Is that the song?
Yes. That's
Okay.
such a bummer. But okay, that's awesome. I also just think it's so cool that you were at one of the first tapings for Cheers. Like, how many people can say that? That's so cool.
I know. It
So
was very
random.
cool.
Love it.
Yes. So you ready for another story?
So ready. Keep them coming.
Okay. All right. Then once upon a time in 1983, David and I, both teachers, left the day after school was out in June and were gone for 10 full weeks to Europe. Now, mind you, this is before cell phones, internet, or anything. So we had our plane tickets to London, and then we had nothing else. We had a map of Europe that I got from AAA and one copy of Frommer's $20 Europe on $20 a day book. That is it. That is all we had with us. No other reservations. We were just going to figure it out as we went. So we bought Eurail passes, which meant you could go anywhere pretty much in Europe on the train. You just hop on a train and go wherever you want. So that is what we did. We made our way eventually to Rome. And after we left Rome, we took a train that was called a Rapido, meaning it's a rapid fast train, and we had to pay extra. So instead of it being free with our pass, we paid extra. Ironically, because it was the slowest train we had ever taken.
Oh,
We were taking it to Brindisi, which is way at the heel of Italy, the boot there that it looks like. And our boat was going to be at like 10:30 that night or something. Well, the train stopped for like an hour and a half and they announced there was a fire. We saw no smoke, no flames, nothing. Once it got started again, it creeped along. It stopped at all these unscheduled places. And sure enough, we got to Brindisi about midnight. It's dark. We don't know where we're going to stay. We get off the boat. There's no like. Sometimes at the train stations, people would meet us and say, "Hi, we have a pension or a place to stay. You want to come with us?" And they'd take you there, or you'd find a phone somewhere, which sounds weird, but that was difficult to find in some countries to try to call someplace from the Frommer book. So here we are, nothing. So a group of about 30 people, I'd say, started just kind of moving together just into the little town of Brindisi. And as we're all walking, people of all different nationalities, we didn't talk to anybody, we just all walked. We get to this street, and this little man with a taxi standing there, and he goes, "Pension." We're all like, oh my gosh, he's going to murder us. So we all as a group just moved around. And as we turned the corner on the next street, he was there again. "Pension." And we're like, no, he's definitely chasing us. He's going to murder us. And then, like, the third or fourth time we saw him, we're like, okay, let's all follow him. So we followed him in his little taxi. He said, just follow him. He took us to his son's pension, which is a boarding house of sorts. It's a place to stay for the night. And woke up his son, I think, came to the door, whoever it was, and of this group of 30 people. And they say, we only have one room left, and it's for 4 people. And these were all apparently just couples because nobody said anything. But I turned to the couple standing next to us randomly and said, "Do you want to?" And they said yes. And the 4 of us raised our hands. And we got this room with 2 people from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, that we had never met before. And so once we got into our room, the little man said, "My other son owns a restaurant. Are you hungry?" Well, yes, we had been on the road for like 15 hours. So he took us in his taxi to his other son's restaurant, where we walked through this tiny little restaurant. It was an outdoor courtyard behind with lights in the trees and all these drunk, happy Italians singing because it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And we had the best spaghetti, and we talked with this couple. She spoke English, her boyfriend did not. And so we all talked through her as an interpreter, and it was the best. See, sometimes the best things happen when things don't go as planned. And it was just such an amazing experience. And then we exchanged addresses, like where we live, not like phone numbers or email addresses or whatever, because back then the only way to get in touch with someone overseas was to send a letter. And at Christmas time, that one year we did exchange Christmas cards,
that's so
and that was
special.
That
yeah.
is so cool.
One other thing different about exchanging letters, I can also add to that. We left our families back home in America, and as a mom now, I can imagine for 10 weeks knowing my child was God knows where because we didn't have plans. So we would send postcards, but in order for us to get any mail from home, then we had to give them the address of American Express offices in some of the cities we knew we were going to, like the big capital cities. And when we'd get to that city, we'd go to the American Express office and say hi, give our names, and see if any mail had come. And we'd get letters from home that way.
It
And
is
even
so cool.
to call home, no cell phones. And in most of those countries in Europe, then not even a public phone that you could use. You had to go to a separate building somewhere and hope it was open, which most of the times it was not. And other times, I remember in Italy, in Rome probably, We went to the building like 3 times because we'd get in line, we'd get to a phone, and then it would disconnect. And it was just be happy for all the ways you have of communicating now.
Yeah,
I think it's a blessing and a curse, though, because it would be nice to just be able to unplug a little bit and just kind of see where the day takes you. A little Italian man coming up to you might be a little scary now as well, but just to be spontaneous like that, like you said, some of your best memories might come from just being spontaneous.
totally. And I'm actually thinking here too, like the knowledge at our fingertips on our cell phones and Google and TikTok, wherever people get their most reliable information. I use air quotes on that. But it's like it almost it detracts from the spontaneity. It's like you plan so much and it has to look like the Instagram posts that you saw and everything. And there's like no room for just going and doing whatever the day brings. So I think that's really cool. So like for all of the hesitance that some people and even myself might feel going somewhere else, it's just cool to know that it can be done and it can be done in a really cool way.
And now a quick word from our sponsor. Newsly is an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android. It picks up the most trending articles on the web on topics you choose at any given moment and reads them to you in a natural human voice. The entire web becomes listenable for the first time, all in one place. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. Stop scrolling and start listening. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, tech, business, science, Bitcoin, or even the Kardashians. It will find you the latest articles and read them to you aloud. And the best part, they have podcasts. Explore trending podcasts from over 80 countries. You can even find us there. I started using it as my default podcast app. They even have a digital radio. Download and use Newsly for free now at www.newsly.me or from the link in the description and use promo code WIVES. That's WIVES. And you can get a 1-month free premium subscription. You can find all this information in our description from this episode. And now back to our episode.
So where's your next story taking us?
Okay, once upon a time in 1992, which means we had 2 children. Your older sister, Erin, was 6, and your brother, Brendan, was 3. And we set out on a cross-country adventure. We had a van that had, at least 70 or 80,000 miles on it. And we pulled our pop-up camper behind it, and we went with another family who had like a self-contained, very small camper. No cell phones back in the day. We were in Custer State Park camping in South Dakota. And the next morning, both families were going to leave and drive. Oh my gosh, I don't know how many hours it would have taken. Probably, at least 8 hours to go through Wyoming to the other side of Wyoming to Cody. And we were going to meet at a campground there. So we both took off separately, different times. We had to drive over the Bighorn Mountains and through the Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming. And the van started chugging a little bit and like practically stopping. At some points it might have. But we finally made our way to Cody, went to the check-in at the campground, and there was a message from our friends who had been in an accident. Now they ended up, amazingly, the camper had tipped, caught on fire, managed to tip on the side that wasn't the door so they could get out and jump off onto the thruway. And the 3 of them were fine, but the dad broke his foot. So we got that message. We drove back over the Bighorn Mountains in the chugging van to Gillette, where they were. They ended up flying home the next morning. He got out of the hospital and they flew home. Then we were like, what should we do? We're standing there at the interstate looking at east and west. We'd planned this trip with them for so long. Do we go back home or continue on? Well, we were planning to meet some friends down in Arizona and some family in Colorado. So we're like, let's just do an abbreviated version of the trip. So let's just do that. So back over the Bighorn Mountains, we went for a 3rd time in the same clothes we'd been wearing at that point for 2 days. And we were 40 miles from Cody and the van totally stopped. Side of the road stopped, and we were in the middle of nowhere, the open range where there is nothing, no houses, no telephone poles, nothing except maybe a random cow. with our two little kids, just stopped. No cell phone, nothing, no town for 40 miles. Waited for quite a while, and one car passed and just kept going. Waited for quite a while more. Another car passed, but then stopped and backed up. And see, well, you have to understand, I was raised in Buffalo, New York, in a time when my mother taught us to be afraid of every stranger. That was just the way it was. So if somebody's stopping, going past us, and then backing up, they're going to rob us and murder us for sure. So now I have two murdering stories, thinking people are going to murder me when all they wanted to do is actually help. They backed up and said, we stopped because we used to own a van just like that. So what's going on? So they said, okay, get in our car with us. We will drive you to Cody. We'll drive you to our mechanic. And they did. Their names were Ann and Jim. Don't remember their last name. The kindest people who taught me so much just about helping others and being good Samaritans. It was amazing. Took us to the mechanic. The mechanic then arranged to go tow the van. Then they took us to a motel. We got checked in, and then we took them to dinner and sat talking with them until it was time to go to bed. Okay, we went to bed in our clothes we'd been wearing for 2 days because our clothes were in the camper that was still sitting on the roadside 40 miles from Cody. The next morning we woke up. Now, if you've ever been in that part of western Wyoming in the summer, like in the summer it can be 80 degrees. When you wake up in the morning, it can be 30. Well, we opened the door to go out to breakfast because right across the street was Irma's Hotel, which Buffalo Wild Bill, whatever he was, he had built that for his daughter. So it's an historic hotel. We open the door, it's freezing. We have these two little kids. So we took the towels from the motel and wrapped them around our children and walked across the street to have breakfast at this amazing hotel we never would have stopped at otherwise. And after that, Ann and Jim came to pick us up, took us back to the mechanic, and we got our car, thanked them profusely, and drove back to get our camper, and on we went.
I feel like before cell phones, it's just like the goodness of people was what had to lead your travels.
And it was. So I hope that Ann and Jim from Wyoming, from Cody, Wyoming, are listeners on this podcast, and they'll know how much not only they helped us, but taught me something about human nature, and then not everyone who's a stranger is going to murder you.
Ooh, preach that to this world. Yes, yes. I have two quick little notes here. First of all, I know that's not the first story that we have in our family about wrapping things around ourselves for warmth. I do recall one time being at a Bubba Gump shrimp company and being cold and you wrapping yourself in paper towels. I do remember that.
That was in New York City, and I said to them, can you turn down this air conditioning? They said the air conditioner is way on the top of this multi-story building, and we have no control over it because it controls the whole building. I was shaking. So I did. I unwrapped all the paper towels and wrapped them around me. And I probably did laps around the restaurant, too, just to, warm up. But go ahead.
It is true. It is true. I remember this. And my second note, this is the second Travel Tuesday in a row where we've had a breaking down story. Right, Allie?
Yes, that's true, because we talked about in Iceland with the flat tire there, and we were on a big mountain then as well.
Yep.
Well, actually, the story really didn't end with Ann and Jim helping us. We got to Salt Lake City. The van broke down again. We had to stay in a hotel then, but we got to go around Mormon Square and the Tabernacle and all that stuff. So that was a nice bonus. Then we visited our friends in Arizona, headed up to Colorado. It broke down again in the Rocky Mountains before we got to Denver. We had to be towed, but this was so cool. They pulled the van and the camper up onto the top of a flatbed, and we got to stay in the van. As they went through the tunnels through the mountain, it was like if there had been a moonroof on the van, we could have lifted our hand out and touched the top of the tunnels. What a great adventure. Thank you, van, for, breaking down so much to give us this joy.
Oh, she was a good one. Aw. All right.
Okay.
I think we maybe have time for one, maybe two more stories. Do you have anything else for us?
Oh, I do. I have a couple really short ones, so maybe that'll work.
Yeah.
Once upon a time in 1994, same camper, I'm guessing a different van. Um, so the kids were 8 and 5 at that point. We went up to the Maritimes, which are the provinces in Canada that are on the Atlantic coast. So one place we went was Fundy National Park in New Brunswick. And that's where, like, there's a town called Moncton and there's a tidal bore. Everybody waits. And when the tide comes in, whoa, does it come in? It like rushes and fills up this river like immediately. It's like a phenomenon. So we were having great fun there. Like the tide would go out and it would be like a mile on the beach near the campground. And then you'd find tons of scallop shells. The kids were having a great time. We hiked to a old copper mine. And then I know the morning of this particular story, though, the kids went to a junior ranger program where they used pooter jars. They took Gerber baby food jars and put a little tube in it, and they were catching insects in that. So they had a blast doing that. We went back to the camper for lunch, and we're talking about that. And I realized that Erin, who was 8, couldn't hear me if she turned her eyes away, if she wasn't like reading my lips. I'm like, uh-oh, she was prone to ear infection. So I'm like, okay, we need to get some medical help somehow. I don't know if I went, because again, no phones, probably went to the camp office. And the little town near there, a little town called Alma, they had a doctor that would come once a week on Tuesdays from 2 to 4. And that was it. Guess what day it was? It was Tuesday when we were there. So it's like, are you kidding me? So we went to this little clinic where he was there for 2 hours. It was an ear infection. We had to go to a pharmacy, which was 15 miles away in an even smaller town, so small that in the window of this tiny pharmacy, they had taped up invitations for everyone in the town who came to the pharmacy to be invited to someone's bridal shower and somebody else's 80th birthday party. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I want to live in a town that's so little that everyone knows and loves each other and everyone gets invited to everything.
That would get
That's so
expensive
cute.
pretty quickly. Think about all the baby gifts to get, the wedding gifts to get, the birthday gifts. Wow. It might be a small
Honey,
town, but
I think like 12 people live there, so there's not many gifts.
true.
Okay, you want me to do my one other last quick one that I have?
Yeah.
Okay. Once upon a time in 1999. Yes, Regan, you were born. You were one of them.
Yay. I was wondering when we were going to get to the good stuff.
Okay, you can edit out all the other stories except for this one that's about you.
We'll just loop it.
You were only a year and a half, but so we went to Disney World at Easter time, and people who are Disney fans might not realize that way back then in 1999, Disney used to have 2 Easter services, a Mass and a Protestant service, and they would do them at the Contemporary Resort. So we went. And in true Disney style, that I had never heard at any other Catholic Mass before, the priest at the beginning announced to everyone, there were thousands of people in that room, please keep your hands inside the church until it comes to a complete stop. And then he announced, the priest will be available for pictures and autographs after the Mass.
I love that.
If I told that in a 2 truths and a lie or whatever story, wouldn't you think that whole story was a lie?
Oh,
But it's
100%.
It's a true story. The end.
Oh my gosh. Well, what a perfect ending to a wonderful fairy tale collection of stories. Well, Mama, Trisha, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your stories and being part of our Travel Tuesdays.
Why, thank you. This was lots of fun. Thanks, girls.
Thanks for tuning in to the Wanderlusting Wives podcast. Come escape with us again every other Tuesday for Travel Tuesdays and every other Wednesday for Wildcard Wednesdays.
Don't forget to give us a subscribe and a follow on all of our social media and wherever you listen to your podcasts. And until next time, wander on.